Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Business Spotlight podcast. I'm excited to have you here today and engage or listen to a conversation with an entrepreneur here local to Middle Tennessee in Nashville, Mr. Victor Brown. He's CEO of Xcellent Life, a company he founded, I believe, back in 2015. We're going to tackle a big topic today and hear about Excellent Life's vision and mission as it relates to proactively helping you manage your healthcare and manage your own health and how that can impact the whole all of society. So, Victor, thanks for being here with us today.
Hey, Craig, I really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of your podcast. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. So thanks for that.
Yeah, great, man. Well, we're happy you're here. So, tell us a little bit about your history, man. How'd you get started? You were telling me a few minutes ago that you grew up in Lexington and you went to school, Lexington, Tennessee, that is,
Correct.
and went to school here in Nashville. Share with the viewers here a little bit about your history.
Sure. So grew up in a small town in West Tennessee. Moved to the Nashville area to attend Middle Tennessee State University. Finished there back in 2000. I guess 1998 was when I finished there. Started going to grad school there and transitioned my grad school to University of Phoenix and really lived in the area until 2005. I love the Nashville area. It's an amazing place. It's grown tremendously. And thought really that I would not necessarily leave the area, but uh, it would I would find opportunity outside of Nashville, where I spent essentially 20 years in the energy sector. And there's a segue as to how energy gets back to healthcare. But
Mm-hmm.
at any rate, chasing career opportunities, moved out of Nashville to South Carolina. From South Carolina, moved to Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, where I spent 3 years. Then from Canada, I moved to Ohio, and then from Ohio to Denver, Colorado. Now, keep in mind, I grew up in a small town, and so all of these changes were pretty big changes, and I had a chance to see the world, traveled around a bit. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I would move back to Lexington, Tennessee. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be starting a company. Well, through a culmination of events, I found my passion in healthcare. And after spending, I say, 20 years in the energy sector, developing a fair amount of subject matter expertise for software applications that protect critical infrastructure, some of which might be part of our national security. Um, my dad was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of a moment of getting more involved with the whole process of health and wellness, how it worked, kind of the infrastructure and tools that are supportive with people, quote, becoming more healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, needless to say, I was pretty alarmed at what I found. Was that healthcare was completely reactionary. And for me, that was pretty astonishing because keep in mind, I had spent 20 years in a sector where that reactionary approach was not a part of the equation. That was not the standard. And the example that I give people is, um, hey, if I were to tell people that we've got a nuclear reactor, let's let that nuclear reactor start to melt down. Would that be a good idea and a good approach? Most people would look at me like I was crazy. Like, why would you do something like that? And
Mm-hmm.
they'd be absolutely right. That would not be a good approach. It caused catastrophic failure and loss of life. Well, meanwhile, that's the standard that we bear in healthcare. That was a completely um, crazy scenario for me because it leads to catastrophic outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that my dad was suffering from or is suffering from type 2 diabetes and now early stages dementia, I associated that bad approach and really the limited use of technology to the suffering that I see my dad go through. And just really became very passionate about making a difference. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I could take existing technology that is applied very effectively in protecting critical energy infrastructure, like nuclear reactors, and apply that to the human body, which is, in essence, very much like a sophisticated electrical network. And so that became the vision for Excellent Life. My dad's growing illness and my mom aging also became rationale for moving back to Lexington, Tennessee, which is where I'm now based. But also it connects me closer to a city that I love a lot, which is Nashville. So I spend a lot of time in Nashville today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, so Nashville is a great town. It's a fantastic town, and I have a comeback story myself, but I'll save that for another day. I find it fascinating that because I come from an operational background myself,
Hmm.
and you have to be very structured in managing operations. I mean, you got to do things very systematically so that you don't, make a mistake per se, right? But if
Hmm.
something does happen, you have to have very structured processes in place, like you described, some kind of incident. You have to be ready and expecting an incident, and you have to be very structured about it. And I find it fascinating that you took that scenario, that approach to operate managing it operationally and applying it to healthcare. I just haven't really thought about that. And then you say there's specific technology that is deployed on the energy side that you're leveraging here with Excellent Life. Can you maybe touch a little bit about that?
Yes, and so it's not even so much the difference in the technology; it's really the approach. And
Mm, mm,
the example that I would give is that in the energy sector, we've had decades to capture data and understand data. A lot of that data to be associated with various energy assets, and I point out the nuclear reactor, but really the understanding of energy assets go all the way down to the energy consumption of a motor, air
mm,
conditioner, a heater, a fan.
mm,
And what that means is that we have enough data that we've collected that we can understand the operating parameters for that asset that
mm.
indicate a normal mode of operation. We can
Right.
also understand when those assets are not operating in a normal way and they're trending in a bad direction, which gives insight to proactive measures we can take to prevent those assets from having catastrophic failure.
Hmm.
And as a result of that, we have a pretty high standard in the energy sector. There's something called the number of nines.
Hmm.
And for something that's deemed a critical asset, like a nuclear reactor, the number of nines represent the number of nines after the decimal point in which you can anticipate the uptime for that asset.
Hmm.
So 99.999% of the time. 90, so the measure of success is really high.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, in the healthcare world, about 70% of the time when we succumb to an illness, that illness is completely preventable. So I happen to believe that, you know, that is a major problem.
Hmm.
And so the data that we are applying to healthcare is essentially providing that granular view of data that has historically been a part of the energy world that allows us to understand the operating parameters. Well, if you can do that for the human body, and our body is giving off signals every single moment of our lives,
Hmm.
and now more time than any time in history, we have the opportunity to capture those signals from wearable devices, different types of interactions that we're having with our mobile device, all this data that's available around us. Well, if we pull that information in, then we can understand those operating parameters of the human body. And so, in
Hmm.
essence, that's what we're doing at Excellent Life, where we evaluate really a comprehensive data set, information that we're capturing from wearable devices, from other softwares, from databases, even information entered in directly from the user, allowing us to say, hey, this is a normal mode of operation, you're good, or saying, hey, we see some indications of health risk associated with the data that we're capturing. These are some things that you can do to avoid those risks. And
Hmm.
so that's essentially how we're utilizing the data in healthcare that has been well proven in the energy sector as being an effective approach.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, so you and I were chatting yesterday a little bit about how in healthcare it's kind of just been accepted, generally accepted,
Mhm.
that this is the way it is, that there's not any other way of doing it. And I remember when Fitbit came out,
Right.
several years ago. That seems like the first time it got on everybody's radar that, monitoring your own pulse rate, your own, breathing rate, what have you, is a way, as you described, to kind of start gathering that data and comparing it to, the general population, just as a very simple example.
Mhm.
Um, so, Excellent Life, if who are your customers with Excellent Life? Who are you
Sure.
targeting?
So while there are a number of applications for our software and technology, our primary focus is the employer space, employers who are self-insured.
Mm,
There's some rationale as to why that is kind of the primary target today versus other applications.
hmm
One, um, we can access kind of the broader audience through going through a business customer. So B2B gets us access to individuals. Our
hmm
mission at Excellent Life is to uh, essentially um empower the quality of life by advancing wellness. And so, in order to do that in a broad way, we want to get our application, our solution in the hands of millions of people around the world, going to businesses who share in the problem that preventable illnesses cause, gets us access to their employee base and the broader community. Um, the problem for employers is that due to preventable illnesses, on average, it's costing them about $2,000 per employee per year.
Wow.
It erodes their profits. It takes it directly out of their bottom line. Uh, those attributes associated with illness that rob them of those profits include essentially lost work time, insurance claims, and higher insurance premiums. Even employee attrition can be associated with lack of wellness. So when you start coupling all of those costs, you get up to the $2,000 cost per employee. We go in and we say, hey, we can help drive a healthier workforce, uh, drive a more engaged workforce. This is ultimately going to get you more productivity, but
hmm
certainly cut your costs associated with that. And so that's our value proposition to the employer space
hmm
and our primary customer. And I say primary customer again because our technology and our approach has a number of applications across the whole spectrum of healthcare and wellness.
Yeah, right, right, right. And so, um, with the, uh, w- I would imagine that Excellent Life is not the only company that is providing this type of approach to managed healthcare. Is that true, or are you guys kind of out on an island?
No, that's very true. There are a lot of companies that are doing a good job in taking some their own kind of approach to driving health and wellness. We do feel strongly that there are two kind of nuances in our approach, attributes about our approach that make us different and allow us to get incredible results.
hmm
Um, One which sits under the hood is a technology we call real-time human diagnostics, something that at some point in the very near future we'll likely file a patent on. But at a high level, real-time human diagnostics is a way of analyzing data that we're storing both in an analog and a digital format. That digital format allows us to normalize the data. And so,
hmm
because we're collecting an enormous amount of data that's normalized, the way we can evaluate that harmonizes kind of three very sophisticated predictive methodologies
hmm
allows us to make predictions about health risk, um, insights about health in real time that is a little more sophisticated, a little more accurate, and those predictions can happen faster than what you typically see across software applications. So that's one differentiator, that real-time human diagnostics technology. The other differentiators that um, we've recognized through research and study and looking at the applications that are out there helping to drive wellness, that there is a pretty big gap in
hmm
the approach. And that gap is really the lack of incentive. It is very human nature that we are conditioned and motivated by instant gratification.
hmm
And when it comes to our health, unfortunately, it allows us to sit back and say, well, I know eating unhealthy is not good for me, but I don't have to worry about that right now. It's something that will affect me 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road. And the fact that we're performing that unhealthy measure or any unhealthy behavior in general is not something that we have to face in real time. Well, because we're missing that, uh, generally speaking, as a part of our application, not only do we visualize the impact, the real time impact of health, we are incentivizing healthy behavior through gamification.
Mm,
Now, while the incentive through gamification is not unique itself, what is unique is the amount of incentive we're providing. Um, Generally speaking, if you're talking about some of the other solutions out there, their incentives come by way of perks, discounts, coupons, or sometimes smaller amounts of money that usually have to go back to a health savings account. And that's something that employees get access to when they basically opt into a corporate wellness program. All of those things are great. They do serve some purpose and they do help drive some behavior. The better way to drive behavior is to understand that it takes a bigger carrot at the end of the stick. So if you
mm,
take those historical applications, you total up the amount of incentive, what you'll come up with is a number between $1,000 and maybe $1,500.
mm,
If I'm employed, I'm getting a salary. How much is $1,500 to me across the year? It's
yeah,
not a whole lot. It's
yeah.
not going to really change my behavior. Well, what if you take that same pot of incentives across the entire population and you combine that to provide bigger rewards? And instead, you say, hey, employee base, we're going to have you compete to improve your
Uh,
wellness. Then measure how much they improve their wellness, which we do in our application. We award points toward measurable improvement. When those individuals improve and their point total is basically climbing up the ladder, they have a chance of winning a much larger sum of money. Now, as an employee, I'm competing for a wellness competition where at the end of the week I get $5,000 if I win, or at the end of the month I get $5,000, I get $10,000. Those numbers are all coming from the same pot of investment or incentives that drive wellness. We just allocate it in a much smarter way.
oh, that's awesome. So,
Yeah.
how long has Excellent Life been offering that type of incentive program, and have you been seeing results with it with your clients?
Yeah, great question. So we've always had the concept of offering that type of incentive from uh, really the day one of the vision, which happened back in 2015.
Hmm.
But understanding that with the vision we have to be this global company, this global leader, it was going to take financing and raising capital to really uh, live that vision. We relaunched the company back in 2022 because we had initially launched as a LLC. I learned through the process of being a well, first time founder trying to raise capital, that it
Hmm.
was really advantageous to have your organization be a C corp from the investor standpoint. So when we converted to being a C corp, we raised some money from Northwestern Mutual, and then a little bit of money from Jumpstart Foundry as well, which is an early stage healthcare VC based in Nashville, Tennessee, in 2022. At that point, we were able to run some pilot programs, and across three pilots and a number of users, we have basically been able to implement that approach of providing rewards to individuals. And what we've been able to see are dramatic differences in terms of the level of engagement, the level of activities, the behavioral change, kind of measured by pre and post surveys, and also the number of medical incidents having across their population go down substantially.
Wow.
So we are very confident in our approach because it's driving measurable results.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic. And so, you're targeting employers that are self-insured, and I would think that those guys, that group, that target group, obviously has their own incentive for implementing, a solution such as yours, right?
They do. They understand the problem. Sometimes they may not understand as well some of the nuances to what can be leading to the cost or make up some of the costs. So it helps to the fact that they understand the problem because in collaboration, we can really hone in on the specific ways in which we can drive value across the organization. So for us, self-insured companies are really a great target for us. And again, when we're doing business with those organizations, it's driving the growth of our vision, which is improving quality of life for all by advancing wellness. And while we like to show the monetary value, and that's of course the driver of doing business, that we're a capitalist society,
Mm-hmm.
at our core, we find a great appreciation to our mission. And so when we know that we're offering value by changing lives and improving lives, that's something that is the centerpiece of what, motivates the existence of Excellent Life.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a mission and a vision too. I mean, when you're changing people's lives, you can easily um, buy into or get caught up in or be a part of. It's easy to be a part of that mission, right? And I think a lot of companies underestimate the value of a purpose and a why, and once they kind of and if it's not front and center, if the leadership is not, you know, reminding people of the
Mm-hmm.
purpose, or for that matter, establishing and guarding a culture, uh, and especially through a growth phase where you're acquiring other companies and whatnot, it can come back to bite you, and locking into a purpose like what you have, especially at your stage in your company. I'm sure you're attracting a lot of good people into your organization.
Yeah, and I would say that having purpose for me, and tying Excellent Life to my purpose, has been the single most important facet in me being able to make it from day one to being here today. Just like any entrepreneur, there are a number of hurdles that you have to overcome, a number of sacrifices you have to make, none of which personally would be worth it unless this was a part of my purpose. There are much easier ways to make a living.
Yeah.
Um, Okay, I spent 20 years in the energy sector, worked as an engineer, worked as a product manager, marketing director, a VP of business development, then an executive responsible for marketing and sales. And my first 11 years was spent with a $40 billion company.
Hmm.
So obviously in that highly specialized space, you get compensated, pretty well. Well, transitioning to entrepreneurship, that compensation goes away.
Hmm.
And so the sacrifices that I've made, again, without purpose would not be worth it.
Yeah.
But
Right.
fortunately, um, being able to communicate that purpose, it resonates with other people. And because of that, we have an incredible team, deep expertise in AI, machine learning. Gentleman who's our CTO has co-authored 3 textbooks. Two of them have been published by SAS. And so very fortunate to have Samuel Berntaski be a part of the team. Then a good friend of mine who I met in undergrad there at Middle Tennessee State, Dr. Lakeisha Crawford, who's a board certified anesthesiologist who serves as our chief medical officer.
Oh, wow.
She's done some incredible work around the world. Her and her husband out there in the Dallas Fort Worth area now. He's actually an eye surgeon.
Hmm.
And uh, that gives us really a north star in terms of the medical value that we bring to the table with our application, because we have Lakeisha, who's always kind of driving home the point from a medical perspective. Like, let's ensure that we're providing, medical value to the individuals that we're touching. And
Yeah.
then last but not least, a new member of the team who has incredible, expertise in just business in general, Van Pennock, who is the head of our business development, who has had exits in the past with transportation business that he founded, also has deep expertise in insurance and the higher education space. And
Hmm.
so our collective team, I can assure you that everyone enjoys getting, a nice size paycheck. Uh, we're not at the stage where we're, collecting salaries like that. We are at a stage where we are driven to see our mission basically be realized, and do that on a global scale. So you have all of those individuals who are making personal sacrifices to ensure that our mission, continues to live and grow. And
Right.
so for that, I tie directly to purpose and me being able to communicate that to people that it resonates with. And
Hmm.
I find myself very fortunate.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. Well, so what is considering all of that, you've gotten traction in your, in your journey here. You've gotten the Excellent Life has definitely gotten some traction and
Mm.
gotten some attention and won some business. What are your goals for the future, for the next 3 to 5 years?
Right. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we want to see our application in the hands of many, many more individuals. We also want to see an expansion outside of the US. Some of those things we're actually working on. That, of course, is going to require us raising capital, which we're in the process of doing now. And I'd say facilitating all of those things, we recently launched a program called Pilot to Partnership. And so,
Mm,
as a part of this program, we're giving self-insured organizations access to our platform for a fraction of the cost so that we give ourselves an opportunity to prove our value to them where they evaluate our solution for up to a year, again at a fraction of the cost.
mm,
Our thinking is that, you know what, if we can bring on more individuals to get access to our platform, we're furthering our mission. But at the same time, we're creating a pipeline of organizations that understand our value. So at the
mm,
end of that year's time, they're going to opt into continuing to partner with Excellent Life to bring them value across their organization, but do so more at market level pricing.
mm.
And so we'll invest in driving wellness. We just are looking for the right partners to invest along with us to trial and pilot our solution.
Right.
That in return will help bring, the investment dollars to the table that we're looking to bring in the short term.
Right. I see. Okay, great. Well, so you mentioned that as you started out as an LLC and you kind of relaunched as a C corp just to make it, I guess, easier to raise capital, uh,
Correct.
and more straightforward. What other what other challenges have you experienced and overcome in the last since you started in 2015? Let's just maybe rephrase it. What's the biggest challenge? The biggest maybe error or challenge, or retracing your future or your plans? Can you
Yeah.
expand on that
So,
for us?
oh man, that's a lot to add to that question. So I'd say for me personally, I'm very competitive.
Yeah.
And so I've never done anything in life where I didn't give 110% and really expect a good outcome.
Hmm.
Uh, and I couple that with having training outside of college, working 11 years for a blue chip organization. So
Hmm.
that meant that when we were doing something early on in my career, I had access to the best training, whether it be leadership development, whether it be marketing. Like I knew the appropriate way to go about driving kind of growth in business when it came to getting a product to global markets. As an entrepreneur, you don't have access to the budget that's required to have all those things be a part of the equation. So
Hmm.
you have to figure out how to get from point A to point B by taking some shortcuts and cutting corners. Well, when you take shortcuts and you cut corners, the visible outcome doesn't look the same as when you can pour into something all of the resources necessary. What can be frustrating at times is that you're never going to get judged or critiqued based on how you've had to navigate around certain challenges to be at a certain place. You're only going to get judged by what people can see. And so, if we're competing with very large companies that have raised millions of dollars, and we are, and there may be nuances in our software that may not reflect uh, the fact that we've had millions of dollars pumped into our organization because we haven't, we may not get extra credit for that. And
Hmm.
so I recognize that, and that can be pretty frustrating at times, because the question that I would love more supporters and investors to ask is that if they can have the organization they have now and the software platform that could easily cost $1 million to develop that we have now, based on a limited amount of resources, what potentially could they have if they had more resources?
Hmm.
So that's, again, that's the question that I would love for more people to ask, but that's never asked. And getting past that, me, personally, has been a bit of a challenge because I am so competitive. I naturally desire to have that factored in. I've had to learn how to recognize that, you know what, it's not even reasonable to expect people to factor that in.
Hmm.
I need to show up with whatever we have, with whatever resources we have, and compete and win regardless of the situation.
Hmm.
So I have to wake up with that mindset every day.
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, let me ask the question then. What do you envision can be done if you had that level of resources? What is possible with your development team?
Yeah, I think becoming a quickly a name, household name recognized organization is driving value across the globe. One of the benefits of working for a $40 billion company for 11 years is that I, along with the other members of the executive team, we have an incredible network of individuals. So it's not hard to get a seat at the table to do business, but you do need, these early validation points in order to get in front of people,
Hmm.
organizations that are much larger, which we have access to. And so as you get those other validation pieces in place, which the capital could allow us to do, then getting very large deals are easily part of the equation. And that's been my background. When I left that $40 billion organization, I had a chance to go to my first startup, not one I founded. I had the opportunity of taking a software concept, turning that into a platform, also building out the marketing team, and in 3 years, closing a $32 million contract and a $5 million contract. Um, Now, at any point in time, in seeing an opportunity from going into that early stage company, leaving that $40 billion company, would I say I saw the opportunity being as big as what I see here at Excellent Life?
Hmm.
I see the opportunity being much bigger. And and so without a doubt, I believe that bringing capital to the table will help us recognize or realize some of the opportunities we already have in the pipeline today, which would generate millions, and then allow us to take advantage of some of the opportunities we have abroad as well.
Yeah. 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 Fantastic. Yeah. There's definitely, yeah, it feels like the market for what it is you guys are providing a solution to is going to just grow and grow and grow. I don't think there's any question about that. And getting in front of the right people at your target customers, your target market, it's going to be you know is going to be I guess the big challenge and getting that exposure that you're looking for.
It is,
Um,
and it's really important aspect of growing business. You have to be in front of the right people. And while we are kind of living in a Zoom society post COVID,
hmm.
it offers some opportunities, but candidly speaking, it doesn't offer the same opportunity as being in the same room with someone.
Right.
And a big part of growth and the opportunity to grow, especially when you're talking about larger deals, is being present in the room. And you can
Hmm.
only be present in the room when you have a budget to support that.
Right.
And so one of the things we're really excited about is that, a larger part of our budget plan from the investment that we're looking to raise is allocated toward growth.
Hmm.
We've got an incredible platform. Certainly, we want to maintain that. Certainly, there are components of it that will advance with as a part of our roadmap. But the big piece of it allows us to be focused on growth, being in the
Hmm.
room, being
Hmm.
present at conferences,
Yeah.
uh, really accelerating what we have in our pipeline and bringing that to fruition.
Hmm.
So yeah, an exciting time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so your biggest challenge then is growth, getting the word out. Is that what I'm hearing?
Getting the word out, helping people understand, we are, a viable option for driving incredible value across their business and our
Hmm.
unique ways of doing that. And yeah, just that is the big challenge.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay. Well, let's see here. I have got probably what are your biggest? Well, let me ask you this one. What are your biggest learnings? What have you learned that has just jumped out at you, or that's significant in your past since you've broken off the corporate path and now into the entrepreneurial path?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, the thing that I've learned, um, and I really appreciate this, is that early on I thought that you had to be at a certain place in life that most people deem as being successful in
Hmm.
order to uh, really give insights that would be um, listen to or absorbed and be impactful. What I've learned is that, and I have a great desire, me being me, to be helpful.
Mm,
What I've learned going through this process is that a lot of times the most impactful insights you can provide and the most helpful are insights that you're providing when you're inside of your journey in a
mm,
real time, giving someone kind of a close look at what it feels like and what it takes to travel that journey well before you might be standing on that plateau that others would deem as being successful. It's important to recognize that you as an individual have the power to transform and change lives by, just inspiring others. Tell people what your journey is like. Help people walk through their journey, and that's been a life saving lesson for me because the stress of traveling that journey, thinking that you don't have anything to give back to someone else that may be traveling that journey for someone who naturally wants to give back is a pretty big stress. But when you recognize that you can share with people, what you're going through, and that by itself is empowering, it's almost like a relief valve. And
mhm.
that has been incredibly helpful and an incredibly powerful lesson that I've learned along the way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, so it's funny you say that because yesterday I was speaking with someone and I heard them say success is in the journey,
Hmm.
you know? And then,
It is.
which reminds me of an old quote, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal,
Hmm.
which, implies that it's a process, that it's not a destination, it's a process.
I believe the same thing. And I'd say success is absolutely the process, and that for the place that most people define success, some kind of status, some kind of, whether it's material things or whatever, all those things are foregone conclusions and can be predicted when you see someone that's walking through the journey of success. Like they're making the sacrifices, they're putting in the work, they're spending the hours. You can easily predict that person's going to be successful.
Yeah.
Uh, so I agree 100%.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so last question. Um, what what is one book you've read either recently that you wished you had read earlier in your career, or what is one book that you read earlier in your career that has served as a bedrock for you that you've
Oh man, I
referred
think
to over and over?
I guess a book that I think is pretty cool is I don't know. There's so many books.
Yeah, tons.
I say, what is the name of this book? Oh my gosh. One book that I really liked is called Winner,
Hmm.
and um, I'm trying to think of the author now. It's a book I read years ago. Is that a? And the essence of that book was about an approach that you have to take in order to win in anything. It gave corporate stories that seemed to be very systematic and seemed to be very um, crude. And I remember reading it at the time, thinking that it didn't seem like a friendly approach.
Hmm.
And I'm a very, kind person, very friendly. So it was almost, when reading the book, I almost found myself at odds with the author and the approach that they took. Um, but in context of having different experiences across almost 30 years now, um, I recognize the value of that book.
Hmm.
I recognize how important it is to, when you surround yourself with people, when you're building a team, to hold people accountable, uh, to have metrics in which um, you have to understand, you know, where people are and relative to goals. And that book has been really impactful in my approach because in order for me to hold myself accountable and hold other people accountable, I have to first make sure that we're aligned on the same goals. So I spend a lot of time talking about purpose and talking about goals. Um, as a leader, I understand I have to be supportive of the people that I bring on board. Like I don't bring anybody on board that I don't trust.
Hmm.
And when I bring them on board, I trust that they're going to do their job. And I have to be in a supportive role from that standpoint because I brought them in to do something that I believe that they can do.
Hmm.
The metrics, um, that is a measuring point, and it tells me if I'm doing my job. It tells me if they're doing their job. And when the metrics are not showing the right thing, we have to have a conversation about getting back on track.
Mm-hmm.
And it just took me, I guess, a long time to get past being kind
Yeah.
and recognize you can still be kind, but you still have to operate. There's operational excellence.
Yep. Agree completely. That's good stuff, man. So is that's an old book, I presume? I
It's a
assume.
book that's been out there for a while. I can't, the
Yeah.
name of the author escapes me, but Winter was the
Yeah.
name of the book.
Yeah.
So,
I'll check it out.
yeah, I had to look it up right quick, the author, but that is a book that certainly shaped my approach.
Yeah.
And
Great.
that, yeah.
Well, Victor, it's been great chatting with you here. I enjoyed the conversation. I feel enlightened and educated on the healthcare space specifically and what you're trying to do, and and what you have in store for your company. It's been a very engaging conversation. So I very much appreciate you coming on and having a chat with us.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, Craig. Like I was really excited to hear that we were going to have this conversation, and just appreciate what you're doing and the opportunity to be a part.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right. Take care. Have a great day.